From the National Catholic Register, this is Register Radio, bringing light and clarity to the news and topics that affect your life.
Islamic State, known as ISIS, invaded Iraq 10 years ago, wreaking havoc across the country. And despite ISIS's defeat 5 years ago, Iraqi Christians are still suffering. EWTN News Iraqi journalist Rody Sher joins us with coverage of this tragic anniversary of the fall of Mosul and the driving of Christians from Iraq's Nineveh plains. Then, continuing our global news outlook, we turn to Venezuela, where tens of thousands of citizens have taken to the streets in protest after Nicolas Maduro claimed victory in the presidential elections late last month. Many countries, including the United States, are demanding the release of detailed poll data. EWTN News' Venezuelan journalist Andres Henriquez joins us for a report. I'm Jeanette DeMello, Executive Director of the National Catholic Register and Catholic News Agency. I'm your host here on Register Radio, joined by Matthew Bunson, my co-host and the Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News. So we're looking at events 10 years ago in June when the jihadist terrorist group Islamic State, known as ISIS, took over Mosul, Iraq's second largest city, then home to some 1,200 Christian families. Then about a month later, it drove the population of the Nineveh plains into the city of Erbil, located about 50 miles east of Mosul in northern Iraq. And according to the Chaldean Archbishop Bashar Warda of Erbil, nearly 1 million Iraqis of all faiths who were fleeing for their lives from ISIS converged upon Erbil, including about 150,000 Iraqi Christians. So this week we remember the plight of the Christians in Iraq and we look back at that devastating summer. We turn right now to Rody Sher, who is a journalist and interim editor-in-chief of CNA's partner that covers the Middle East, ACI Mena. Rody, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you so much, Janet and Matthew. It's such a pleasure to have me in this show. Thank you so much.
Yes, so we're talking about what happened that summer, 2014, especially to all these displaced people who were basically driven to Erbil from the Nineveh plains. What has happened to all of these people?
Well, Janet, that summer was devastating when ISIS took over Mosul, Nineveh plains, and other Christian cities and villages. As you said, thousands of Christians, people were forced to flee their homes overnight. They left behind everything, homes, their memories, businesses, and even personal belonging. Many sought refuge in Erbil because it was safe back in that time, and other parts of Kurdistan regions, the Hook, Suleymaniya. Even some of them went outside the border to Turkey and Jordan. Of course, the sudden displacement created a humanitarian crisis in the country, with people living in temporary shelters in Erbil and other cities in Kurdistan region, and also the churches, the schools, relying heavily on the aid provided by the church for the few first weeks. I remember how we worked with the rest of the youth in the Archdiocese voluntarily and with the church authorities led by His Grace Archbishop Warda to assist the families and the people who came to Erbil and take refuge there. And also how the Christian families in Erbil helped in providing foods and also opened their homes for these displaced people. Janet, these are only few memories of the summer of 2024.
Right, and I should have of 2014, and I should have said that you are based in Erbil, so you do have firsthand knowledge of these experiences. And Matthew, I think you were going to join in here with a question or a comment.
Yeah, so one of the most memorable signs that we saw throughout the terrible reign of ISIS was the Nazarene symbol. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Of course. So one of the bad memories that we have is that sign. It is N in Arabic, and many people in Mosul, they pointed out to the houses and homes of Christians with that sign. That helped the ISIS to identify these families and go and attack these homes. Therefore, the Christians have some bad memories with their neighbors because these people were the people who pointed out to their homes and helped the ISIS to know where they live and made the process easier for them, which also created conflict of trust in the neighbors, where people, even now, they don't have the trust to go back because of what happened back in that time. People were easily identified. Most of the Christian homes were took over by ISIS. They destroyed every single home there. They stole the belongings of these Christians, including their precious memories. This is basically what happened in 2014.
Yes, and not all of the Christians were able to stay. You mentioned how the community came together, that there were so many people trying to help each other in the Christian community and in the minority communities, but not everyone was able to stay. And there has really been, for many, many years, not simply in the last 10 years, an exodus of Christian families from Iraq and from much of the Middle East. Can you speak about that exodus and how many have left?
Well, basically, thousands of families, Janet. The numbers are very hard to know how many of them left the country, how many of them left Mosul back in that time. None of the Christians left in Mosul. Mostly they came to Erbil, to Kurdistan region, as we mentioned. After that, many Christians of those who came and take refuge in Erbil, they traveled to Europe, to Australia, to other countries, and very few of them returned to their homes because the situation, the security, the lack of trust in local authorities in providing the basic need for them. The numbers are not clear for the church authorities, neither for us, but very little of them remained, even returned to Mosul, if that.
Wow. It sounds as though there is still a lot to be done, even though ISIS was defeated in 2017, so 5 years ago. I have seen reports in secular media and in our own media at ACI Mena and at EWTN News of Mosul being rebuilt, becoming more secure, a lot of restoration happening. What is the situation now in terms of the safety of the city, but also the rebuilding project?
Well, Janet, while Mosul is gradually becoming a little more secure, than the situation for Christians remains precocious. Many Christians are, as I said, are hesitant to return due to the destruction of their homes and the churches, and also lack of trust and security situation. As I said, many displaced Christians in Erbil have tried to rebuild their lives, but it's a slow process. The community are still facing challenges in terms of employment, education, and also long-term stability in Mosul. If we've reported many times that the churches are being rebuilt. Some of families returned and are trying to rebuild their houses, but with the existing challenges, it's so hard for them to guarantee that this would not happen again. And these people, and Christians particularly, are very tired. It's not the matter of 2014. It's way before that. These families are not ready to face another ISIS again. Well, ISIS will come and return, God forbid, in other shapes and other names. The ideology of ISIS is still in the mentality of these people. Because as you know, ISIS is not only a term for a militia, but it's an ideology that exists among the people there. So it's even ISIS was defeated, but the ideology is still there. People cannot be convinced that to go back again to Mosul and rebuild their life as if nothing has happened. So it's very difficult, even if we see that many people return to Baghdad, Qaraqosh, which is in Nineveh, not very away from Mosul, but Mosul itself will be a little more challenging since the Christians there have not their identity. But if we talk about the villages and cities such as Teleskov and Baghdad, Qaraqosh, people sort of have some more base there. They have their lands, and the government is trying to protect these lands and trying to create a more stable future for them. But to convince all of them to return would be real challenge.
Matthew, why don't you join? You had a question that you wanted to ask.
Yeah, Rody, I was going to ask, here we are about 3.5 years removed from Pope Francis's apostolic visit to Iraq. Is there still that influence there? And what's the legacy of that papal visit?
Pope's visit to Iraq was something that Iraqi people, not only the Christians, will remember forever. There were attempts for Pope John Paul II to visit, but it never happened. So the visit of Pope Francis in the midst of coronavirus was something very special, and it meant a lot for not only Christians. The legacy of Pope Francis will always stay, and the memories will always stay regarding his visit. Now, if we talk about what changes he brought to the platform, of course, the Iraqi, many Iraqis, they did not know much about the Christians, especially Iraq is big, and Christians do not exist in every single part of Iraq. But it was a great introduction about the Christianity and the values that we hold in the region and how important we are to the mosaic of Iraq, how important it is for Christians to stay in this country. Pope tried to bring the concept of the brotherhood. The motto of his visit was, "You are all brothers." The initiative was to make everyone feel that regardless of the changes and differences that we have in our nationalities and our religion, but we stay brothers. Pope tried to bring this initiative to Iraqi people. We saw differences. We saw reaction from even the government. They started taking care a little bit more about the Christians, allowing them for more positions. And it was a great visit, not only for Christians, but also from different perspective. And we hope that the visit and the legacy of the visit would not only be for the upcoming few years, but forever.
Yes, we sure hope that. And I do want to point to some of our content at ncregister.com. Archbishop Warda of Erbil wrote a commentary there, and it says, in Iraq, ISIS is gone, but Christians remain forgotten, and it's a bid to remember what is happening now with Christians still. And we also had him on EWTN News Nightly, August 7th, so you can look up that content as well on our EWTN News app. Rody, so grateful to have you with us. I'm going to continue my prayers for the persecuted Christians throughout the world, but also in Iraq.
Thank you so much, Janet. Thank you so much, Michael.
You're listening to Register Radio on EWTN. We will be taking a short break, and up next we'll be talking about Venezuela. Stay tuned for more.
Let's return to Register Radio on EWTN.
Welcome back. I'm Jeanette DeMello, Executive Director of the National Catholic Register and Catholic News Agency. I'm your host here on Register Radio, joined by my co-host Matthew Bunson, Vice President and Editorial Director of EWTN News. We are joined by Andres Henriquez, a Venezuelan writer specializing in religion and politics, who writes for ACI Prensa, that's EWTN News' Spanish language news agency. He's been covering events in Venezuela, and of course, if anybody's been following the news, you've seen that the July elections in Venezuela were touted as an opportunity for radical change in the country, yet here we are with longtime socialist government of Nicolas Maduro claiming victory, and now there are massive protests. So Reuters has reported that at least 20 people were killed in the protest, and some, let's say 1,200 or so, were arrested in connection with demonstrations. So we've got a really serious situation here in Venezuela. Pope Francis has urged prayer for those in conflict there. And the Catholic bishops, I understand, have also spoken out. So we want to start with that, Andres. We want to talk about what the Catholic bishops and the cardinals have had to say about the elections. Some have seemed to be quite outspoken. Can you tell us what's going on there now?
Thank you so much for having me, Jeanette and Matthew. It's an honor for me to be here. Indeed, the bishops and the cardinals, they have been pretty straightforward. We are right now at 11 days past the presidential elections, and Venezuelan bishops have already released 3 statements, plus a letter from the country's 2 cardinals that got leaked to the press. In the letter and in these 3 statements, they acknowledge that what happened on July 28 was indeed a fraud. And during these days, the bishops have bravely spoken out against the regime's abuses and emphasized their prayers for those who are suffering, especially those who have lost family members in the protests or have relatives detained with no knowledge of their whereabouts. So I think that the truth is that we Venezuelans are suffering under a communist and criminal tyranny, and the Catholic Church in the country has been a beacon of hope and dignity in these difficult times.
Absolutely. I mean, some of these bishops have really been, I would say, extremely outspoken, and I wonder, is their safety jeopardized, Andres?
I think that we Venezuelans must be very proud of our bishops. During these past weeks and since the Chavista regime was established back in 1998, they have bravely denounced every outrage of the Chavismo against the people. So the bishops and all the clergy have been really brave, really brave. And even though this has caused them a great persecution and danger, so yes, I think that the Catholic Church in the country has done a great job denouncing these outrages.
It's not new. Their pushback is nothing new, is what I'm hearing you say. So, part of the Bishops' Conference appeal was to unite their voice to the demands of the world. Really, there's been an outcry from around the world asking for verification of these election results. Who else around the world has pushed back against these results, and what are they saying? On what grounds are they pushing back?
I think that the countries of the free world and the ones that truly respect democracy and freedom have been the ones calling out the fraud committed by the Chavismo regime. In this context, I think that it's important to highlight the support the United States has given to the Venezuelans' fight for freedom, applying pressure on Maduro and other Chavista leaders to try to get them to step down peacefully. However, and as I've mentioned in other interviews, the international diplomatic pressure isn't enough because the Venezuelan regime doesn't play by democratic rules and has no scruples. So Chavismo operates like a cartel, like a mafia, and will do whatever it takes to stay in power. So I think that indeed more forceful actions are needed.
And just so we're clear, if Maduro is inaugurated next January, it would be his 3rd consecutive 6-year term and a continuation of that Chavismo. This is the left-wing populist ideology, the socialist ideology of Hugo Chavez. Talk about exactly what has happened to the country under Chavez and Maduro, because Venezuela at one point was one of the most prosperous countries in the southern hemisphere, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And the country now is simply destroyed. Maduro is just a continuation of Chavez policies that wreck the economy and basic services while wasting the massive oil revenues that the country received. So people are dying here because they can't afford medical treatment. Water and electricity are constantly failing, and people can access even the most basic goods to survive. So this is just what communism does. It can destroy a country and humiliate its people in a horrible way. I think that Venezuela's situation should be a warning to many countries, especially I think to the United States as it enters election season. You should never vote for communists because they have no respect for God or human dignity.
Wow, those are strong words. I think a minute ago you mentioned that more needs to be done, not simply asking for results, to show and verify what's happened in the polling booth, but You said more should be done from the international community. What do you think should be done? What could be done? I know in the past there have been U.S. sanctions. Is that the kind of thing you think could happen next?
Right now, there's a negotiation process going on by the leaders of several countries, including Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico. So this is a dangerous ground because I don't really know if a force action is the best thing to actually remove Chavismo from power. But in diplomatic ways, I think that the pressure should be increased and the sanctions should be reimposed to Chavismo leaders to try to depose them from power.
So, Andres, I'm remembering back to, I guess it was the last election cycle when, again, there was outcry over the election of Maduro. And the Pope did finally, speak about the protests and what was happening there, but there was a bit of tension, a question of will he speak out, because there was an understanding the Vatican was trying to work behind the scenes with negotiations and whatnot. So the Church has had a role in negotiating. Can you speak a little bit about that role, both from the Vatican level, but also from the country's bishops and cardinals? They've had a part in trying to smooth over tensions.
The Church in Venezuela has played a key role in many attempts of dialogue in the past, even, as you say, promoted by the Vatican and by the Pope Francis. However, Chavismo has used these efforts to buy time, to regroup and to cling to power. So the cardinals made it very clear in their last letter that they won't participate in another fake dialogue between the regime and the democratic opposition because it simply would disrespect the majority will of Venezuelans as expressed on July 28th.
Yeah, so we haven't talked much yet about the opposition, right? So there's an opposition group that has had the support of the people, and they are claiming that they won the election. This is Gonzalez. I'm missing his. Edmundo Gonzalez is the candidate, the opposition candidate. Can you speak to what they proposed and what the opposition party is saying now?
Okay, so this time the opposition organized brilliantly to expose the fraud that Chavismo was going to commit. And it's important to remember that these illegal practices by Chavismo have been happening for years. But I think this time they got caught, and the opposition led by Maria Corina Machado, which is the opposition leader in Venezuela, and Edmundo Gonzalez, which was the presidential candidate, set up teams of electoral witnesses at every voting center in the country. And after the election ended, these witnesses received their respective electoral tallies, which are the physical proof that validates the electronic results transmitted by the voting machines. So the opposition quickly collected these tallies and digitized them and uploaded to a website where they can be freely accessed. And based on these records, the opposition claims that their candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, won by a wide margin of around 30 points. So far, Chavismo hasn't been able to dispute this and refuses to publish the official electoral tallies through the electoral body that they control. So I think and I believe that this conflict goes beyond politics. In Venezuela, this isn't about competing ideologies or a political campaign where different sides make promises to win a democratic election. In Venezuela, and it's the vast majority of people who are being held hostage by a corrupt and criminal elite that refuses to give the country back. So in that sense, I think the opposition and the Catholic Church are on the same side, and the society in general. And this is the side that wants a better future for the country based on peace, truth, and justice. And once that's achieved, I think that we can discuss other aspects of what the current opposition leadership offers to the country and to Catholics in general.
How are the people holding up right now, Andres? I mean, it almost, from the outside, it seems hopeless because the people keep trying, even the last election, was it 5 years ago? And so how are they holding up hope? Are they hopeful?
I mean, I think that the vast majority of Venezuelans are hopeful that this grave situation, will end at some point in the near future. There is this tense calm in the environment that I think it can explode at any moment. And this is one of the greatest fears of the bishops, that in the country would happen a social explosion or something like that that would cause more violence and more death that it has caused until now. So people are holding up. People are just clinging to their regular and normal lives until this situation can be solved. But I do think that the great majority of Venezuelans do hope that this will end soon.
Is there a devotion, a lady, or some kind of saint? Who do you pray for that we can join you in interceding?
It's interesting that you ask me this, because I just these past days was speaking to a priest who firmly believes that Our Lady of Coromoto, which is the national devotion, the national advocation of Our Lady here in Venezuela, would play a crucial role in overthrowing communism in the country. So we Venezuelans pray a lot to her, to that devotion, to Our Lady of Coromoto, and to Jose Gregorio Hernandez, which is a doctor that lived in the past century, and it's soon to be declared saint by the Vatican, God willing. So I think that these two are the main devotions that we have here in Venezuela, and that will help us to get past this situation.
Excellent. Andres, thank you so much for joining us. We'll continue to pray with you and to follow this news at Catholic News Agency that prints the news of ACI Prensa. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jeanette and Matthew. It was an honor for me to be here.
Remember, for more news, analysis, and commentary, check out the National Catholic Register online at ncregister.com. Thanks for joining us here on Register Radio on EWTN. Together with Matthew Bunson and my producer, Michael McCall, I'm Jeanette DeMello, and until next week, may God bless you.